St. Andrew's Pike. I don't know about you. I'm your host, Sonny Kelly, and I'm a proud Irishman. I'm not Scottish, but something happens when you hear those pipes, doesn't it? Go Fighting Scotsman. I tell you what. I was told that coming from Cumberland County, I cannot root for any team but the Scotsmen here. That's right? Is that correct? That's correct. Otherwise, I may not make it out alive. So, we've got Ron Hargrave here, Superintendent of Scotland County Schools. We thank you for being here today. I want to welcome everyone and ask you to remain standing because we have a special treat. We're going to hear the national anthem as sung by Mr. Ed Williams, choir master, accompanied by Mr. Sean Moore.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed, how twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. You may be seated. Welcome to St. Andrew's Martin Luther King Jr. Community Celebration, service to others. I also want to give a special thanks to the Fort Bragg Clarinet Quartet who played that beautiful music on our way in. And please give them a round of applause. Thank you for your service and your wonderful talent. And now I'd like to call up Major Ira Baldwin for the invocation.
May we please rise. Dear Heavenly Father, merciful God of all creation, in your divine providence and wisdom, you have called us, your children, to serve as living witnesses to your truth, love, and justice in this world. A world that is often filled with evil, hatred, bigotry, violence, and indifference. We are gathered before you in remembrance and thanksgiving for the short life and enduring legacy of the late Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. We thank you for his very short time among us, for his example of meekness, courage, and faith. Although Dr. King's life was ended by an assassin's bullet on April 4th, 1968, his struggle, our struggle, continues to this day. We rejoice in the fact that Dr. King continues to inspire millions of people all over the world today, people of every religion and creed, of every color, ethnic heritage, young and old, rich and poor alike, to rise above themselves and to realize that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Through his own example of civil disobedience and nonviolent resistance to the evils of bigotry and racial segregation, Dr. King taught us all how to put the words of Jesus into action when he said, "Love your enemies, bless those that curse you, and pray for those that persecute you. He taught us that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Lord, give us the same courage to live by what we profess with our mouths and believe in our hearts, and to accept the teachings of Christ as your rule and guide, and to put into action by walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Dear Father in heaven, mold and fashion our memories of Dr. King into the guiding vision for true and active discipleship, so that under your grace that we too might have a lasting effect upon this world we live. This, Father, we ask in the name of God, the Father, your Holy Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
One of my favorite Bible scriptures says, enter his gates with thanksgiving. At this time, let us thank God for all of those veterans and active duty service members who have put their lives on the line, who are less than 1% of our U.S. population, but every day put their lives, their livelihoods, their family on the line for the rest of us. If you are a veteran or you're a military service member, would you please stand so that we may give you a round of applause? In keeping with our theme, to serve others, we want to thank you especially. And now, with no further ado, Mr. Paul, as I was allowed to say, Mandase Campus President.
Well, it's a pleasure to have all of you here on our campus. I want to, on behalf of the St. Andrews University community and on behalf of Scotland County, it's a pleasure to welcome you to this celebratory gathering in honor of the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. I want to extend on this cold evening a warm welcome to each one of you, but especially to Major Baldwin for that really thoughtful invocation, to our MC extraordinaire, Mr. Kelly, to our keynote speaker today, Colonel Gibson, to the Clarinet Quartet, and to all the many other women and men of the armed forces who are with us today. In so many ways, you are exemplars of the pursuits that Martin Luther King had in supporting justice and the importance of the commitments that you've made to defend and protect these highest ideals of our country, which are the same ideals that he cared deeply about. Also want to express my appreciation to the students, faculty, and staff on this year's MLK Day Planning Committee that was ably chaired by Renee Leach. Where is Renee? Right there. For all your hard work over the years. And also for all the volunteers who have made this National Day of Service and this evening's celebration possible. Today, as some of you may know, is the 30th anniversary of the first MLK celebration and National Day of Service. And all across the country today has not only been a day of celebration and remembrance, but one of public service, a commitment that Dr. King had central in his ministry. This event tonight culminates what began this morning at the St. Andrews campus as a day for students, faculty, and staff to volunteer their time and their talents both in the community and on the campus, in keeping with the National Day of Service component of this holiday. In a few moments, you're going to hear a lot more about the details of this Day of Service and the number of participants that we had in it all throughout the day. On a personal note, I try each year on this day to read or to listen to one or more speeches given by Dr. King. And while I'm always moved by his deep commitment to equal justice under the law and to the Christian gospel, this year I've been reminded again of his words of extraordinary determination and persistence, especially during the worst of times when he had grave doubts about the ability to hold the civil rights movement together in the face of a country that was by and large unwilling to change and resistant to his message. When we look back from the vantage point of today, it all seems so easy in a sense, and yet we know that he faced staggering odds, a group of followers who at times were dispirited, and many national leaders and organizations determined to see that he would fail. So tonight, as we celebrate this remarkable life and his legacy, let's not forget that justice and fairness and the American dream still elude many of our friends and neighbors all across the country and in this very community. One only has to look at the headlines in the newspapers, but there's still a lot of work left to be done. It's our responsibility to keep moving forward, taking concrete steps, in some instances to taking a little risk today, tomorrow, and on into the future to help bring about the beloved community that Dr. King talked about, was so eloquently committed to, and died in pursuit of. So, I encourage you to settle back and enjoy. You're going to have a wonderful celebration tonight in word and in music, in this very special day of national recommitment to the ideals and to the visions of Dr. King. Welcome all of you. We're glad you're here.
If you haven't already learned, I'm a little bit energetic. So they gave me a wireless microphone so I can move around a little bit. So please forgive me if I get a little antsy tonight. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be in front of a lot of people that I haven't been able to see before because I live all the way up in Cumberland County. But one thing, can anybody tell where I'm from originally, by the way? Somebody thought Texas. Well, you ask my son, you know where I'm from, son. I'm from California. And where I'm from, we go really fast. We talk really fast. Everything's fast, 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 right? Back home, you know, you go to a fast food restaurant. You pull up to a Taco Bell, for example, and you pull up, and before the tires can even stop, they say, and you quickly give your order. If you don't, you get left behind, right? So I'm like, you know, acting like I've never been to Taco Bell before. Do you have anything non-gluten? Sir, I don't have this. Okay, let's see. Let me get 2 tacos with, all right, those tacos, I don't need. And before you know it, you go, you pay your money, you get what you get, it's in the bag, we move fast. So please forgive me if I go a little bit too fast tonight. I'm going to try to slow myself down. And it's not because Southerners are slower, but it's because Southerners have taught me you take your time with things. And I really appreciate that. Because when I came here, I went to what you call a Bojangles. Now, where I'm from, Bojangles is the dancing man, you know, Bojangles. But down here, it's delicious biscuits and chicken and Southern cooking is wonderful. You just love it. And I said, okay. I'd heard to go to a Bojangles. I said, let me drive up to this Bojangles. I pull up, and the lady says, hey, honey, what can I get for you? I'm looking around like, me? Okay. I said, yeah, let me get I guess a biscuit and a couple of pieces of chicken. She said, oh, baby, no. You need to go ahead and get the 2-piece special. I'm throwing a blueberry biscuit for you. Okay, baby, sugar, honey, darling. Now, I'm not gonna lie, in California, you call me baby, sugar, honey, darling, I'm getting the numbers. I'm getting the digits. I pull up with my telephone number, ready to pass on to her. And I realized it wasn't about that. She was just being nice. She was just taking her time. You know how I knew that she was gonna take her time? Because she said, honey, will you just pull up to the parking lot, just, 5 minutes, maybe 10, we're gonna still cook the biscuits for you. Y'all do. You don't have fast food down here. Well, I gotta pull up to the side and wait 10 minutes for you to cook the biscuits. I know you're taking your time with some things. But I wanted to appreciate that. Tonight's theme is to serve others. And to serve others, you've got to first get to know who they are. You've got to take the time to find out what they need. And I'm so grateful that St. Andrews University, the students, the faculty, the staff are getting behind this theme. And in that note, I want to welcome to the stage today Dr. James Henry, Assistant Professor of Communications, who's going to tell us more about the day of service. Dr. James Henry.
If you are a St. Andrews student and faculty member, would you take your right hand and put it around on the left side and give yourselves a pat on the back? We started at 9 o'clock this morning in front and behind Belk to see what was going to happen, and I really wasn't sure because I felt like I was herding cats. We had almost 300 students involved today on all different levels. A dozen or more faculty who came and worked and supervised projects, all 19 sports teams, and their coaches and our equestrians were out and about and working on campus. Michelle Eld is in our admissions department, and she was instrumental in helping to organize the sports team. So I'm asking her to share what we did with that, and then I'll conclude.
Okay. So overall, our baseball team went to Camp Monroe and did outdoor cleaning and also put some of the things away, kind of tidied up there and made a difference. The wrestlers helped the Laurinburg city streets clean up throughout the city. The women's track and cross-country team helped clean up our art rooms here on campus. The women's volleyball, worked in the library inside and unfortunately outside in the cold. And the men's and women's golf were both in the theater working to clean and paint our theater here. And the women's swim team helped paint in the church community service building in the city. The men's swim team actually went to the Storytelling and Art Center downtown Laurinburg. The student government and both of our lacrosse teams went to the Orange Dorm here at St. Andrews and cleaned inside and outside, which we all know it can always use a little bit of cleaning. And the women's softball worked in the lake house, both inside and out, and the equestrians worked hard on the trail at their facility, which I think they all enjoyed. And we all really appreciate that our students are willing to go out in the community and help, even on a cold day like this. So thank you all very much, and Dr. Hector will continue with us.
I stayed on campus, and we had the men's and women's basketball teams, the men's and women's soccer teams, the men's track and cross-country teams and faculty, and lots of other students who showed up at 9 o'clock this morning. They were given large trash bags and latex clothes from Lowe's, and they hit our streets and our campus, and we are clean tonight. They walked and picked up litter for over 500 acres, which is our property, and Dogwood and Magnolia never looked so good, and the disgusting service road, you could eat off of it. 401 is cleaned up for at least a day, and we look so nice. But we did follow Dr. King's challenge. Life's most persistent and urgent question is this: what are you doing for others? Our answer today was St. Andrews is part of a greater community whose calling it is to go beyond self and to serve. And service is best served graciously when it is about others. And we did just that. Service was the winner today. Our students, our staff, and our faculty, they went above and beyond. Thank you.
Our next speaker is our featured speaker, and he is the quintessential servant in many ways, in my opinion. A servant of his family, servant of his community, servant of many students as a scholar, and certainly a servant of this nation as a warrior. I am an Air Force veteran, and I'm about to introduce an Army man. And normally an Air Force person might take a couple of jabs, say a few things of humor or something disparaging about the Army, but this next gentleman, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes Gibson, is not only bigger than me, he's also smarter than me, and he has the mic after me, so I'm going to obediently, sir, read your bio. We're grateful to have Lieutenant Colonel Hayes Gibson here with us tonight. He's a native of Lufkin, Texas. He was commissioned into the aviation branch of the Army in 1997 after graduating from the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, with a degree in operations research. Following command, Lieutenant Colonel Gibson attended the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, and then returned to West Point as an assistant professor in the Department of Mathematical Sciences. Prior to arriving at Fort Bragg, Lieutenant Colonel Gibson completed his doctorate in business administration from the Harvard Business School in technology and operations management. Lieutenant Colonel Gibson is a senior Army aviator qualified in the UH-60 A, L, and M models of the Black Hawk helicopter, and is a graduate of both the airborne and air assault courses. Lieutenant Colonel Gibson's awards include the Bronze Star Medal with 1 Oak Leaf cluster, Meritorious Service Medal with 2 Oak Leaf clusters, 3-time recipient of the Air Medal, Army Commendation Medal with 1 Oak Leaf cluster, Army Achievement Medal with 1 Oak Leaf cluster, National Defense Service Ribbon, Afghanistan and Iraq Campaign Medals, Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Korea Defense Service Medal, Army Service Ribbon, and he's a 5-time recipient of the Army Overseas Service Ribbon, as well as the NATO Medal. Lieutenant Colonel Gibson is married to Nicole Gilmore of Birmingham, Alabama, and they have 2 lovely daughters, Madeline, age 9, and Morgan, age 8. Let's put our hands together in thanks for Lieutenant Colonel.
Thanks a lot for the very nice introduction, and thank you for inviting me to come tonight to be a part of the celebration. I really appreciate it, and coming out from Fort Bragg was a nice drive. But ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate being able to be here today in honor of our great American. 50 years ago, on a warm August day, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the man whose life we celebrate today, stood in front of a crowd of nearly 250,000 people gathered in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. When he addressed the crowd, he called the peaceful demonstration the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. The speech he delivered, where he spoke of a dream in which men and women would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, was just 17 minutes long. But it was 17 minutes which changed the course of a nation. Now, I don't have anything more profound to say than Dr. King, so I'll try to keep this less than 17 minutes. So, good evening. Again, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Heights Gibson, and I'm a soldier and paratrooper in the United States Army. And I'm here to talk to you today on what's been designated as the National Day of Service, to talk about what service means to me as a soldier in our Army. There are many ways to serve. As I look around, I see teachers, school administrators. As a former assistant professor at West Point, I know how important and how thankless your service can be. I also see many of you who serve your community in other ways: firefighters, police officers, public servants. For all of you out there, thank you for your service. It is greatly appreciated. You are the unsung heroes of your community. Today, I'd like to share what a military call to service means, and how African Americans have always answered that call. And it starts with your first introduction to the military, whether it's in basic training, or for me, at reception day at West Point, or in a Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC. It's the process of turning civilians into a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, or Coast Guardsman. Men and women from all over the country, from all different backgrounds, from all different walks of life, leave their past behind, put on the uniform, and from that day forward, they are all equal. Just as Dr. King said, it's not the color of your skin, but the content of your character. As young men and women go through training, they learn about values. Each of the services has their own set of values. And they're all pretty similar, not much variation. And in the Army, we have an acronym, and ours kind of spells out leadership. Now that stands for loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. But right smack dab in the middle is self-service. And that's the one that I'd like to talk to you about today. African Americans in our Army have been living up to that ideal of selfless service from the birth of our nation and up to present day. Even before the founding of our nation, African Americans have shed blood standing up for the rights we now sometimes take for granted. In 1770, before anyone even thought of the United States of America, British troops fired on a group of protesters who had gathered along what is now State Street in Boston. That attack wounded dozens of people and killed 3 colonists. Among those, a former slave, Crispus Attucks. Later, many African Americans would fight and die in the American Revolution to stand up for the ideals we see in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Now, of course, there's just a little bit of irony in those words. They were written by a man who himself owned slaves, and those words certainly didn't necessarily apply to everyone at the time. It would take many years and many bloody battles for African Americans to finally realize that dream. Our nation split over the issues of slavery and a terrible civil war. Many African Americans, some of whom had just escaped slavery, formed a unit known as the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. By all accounts, the unit had high morale, even though the Confederate president at the time, Jefferson Davis, promised death to any member of the regiment who was captured, and even though those soldiers were only paid half as much as whites at the time. But as the men of the Massachusetts Regiment marched through many small towns in South Carolina, former slaves cheered. Their victory meant that men and women of color no longer had to live as slaves. But though slavery had been abolished, it was still a long battle for African Americans, who continued to serve with distinction and honor in a country which treated them as second-class citizens. They served in the Western Plains as the legendary Buffalo Soldiers. And as our nation fought its first major overseas war, thousands of African Americans were called into service, many serving on the front lines. One group of famous African American soldiers was a regiment which came to be known as the Harlem Hellfighters. Many whites did not want to serve alongside blacks, so they were attached to the French army for the duration of that war. The French treated them as they would any other army unit, so they integrated them immediately. And from that unit, 2 African Americans were awarded the Medal of Honor, our nation's highest award for valor. It completely surprised the War Department, especially because no one at the time trusted African Americans with weapons and basic training. They went through their entire basic training back then without touching a rifle, which, as I think about it, would be pretty hard, but we didn't. And whenever they simulated combat and training, they held broomsticks and yelled bang. Not necessarily doing a realistic training that we expect our troopers to do today. So you would think someone would have taken note and incorporated African Americans into the military, but they didn't. In fact, the War Department commissioned studies, and I use the word studies extremely loosely, claiming that African Americans were unfit for military service, especially aviation. Now, as someone with over 1,700 hours in the cockpit of a Black Hawk helicopter, I can personally attest that's not true. So as our nation entered its Second World War, blacks were once again called to service. Over 100,000 served overseas during the war in both the European and Pacific theaters. At the time, the military was officially segregated, with African Americans serving in special units like the famous Tuskegee Airmen. But as we see so often, there's a difference between a piece of paper which says you cannot fight in combat and what actually happens when bullets start to fly. African Americans served on Normandy Beach. In fact, the most famous picture of Normandy Beach includes a long line of balloons that you would see along the beach. Those balloons were called barrage balloons. What they did was they actually helped protect the Navy fleet as we did that assault. They were set up largely by an elite all-black battalion. So no weapons, but balloons. So it still helped out. So next time you see a Normandy picture, take note. When American troops were nearly overrun at the Battle of the Bulge in the winter of 1944, over 2,000 African Americans volunteered to rush to the front line to push back the German offensive. However, there's one unit that's near and dear to my heart as the battalion commander in the 82nd Airborne Division. That battalion is known as the 555th Parachute Infantry Battalion, known as the Triple Nickel. This battalion of African Americans who went through the exact same parachute training as regular airborne troops However, during the war, they weren't deployed to combat. They were deployed to fight fires in the Great Northwest. So men who would throw themselves from planes and go into mellow fires. So although they weren't getting fired at by bullets, they could get burned and killed the same as anybody else. And at the end of that war, at the end of World War II, the Triple Nickel received new orders and consolidated as part of the Army's elite 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The Triple Nickel originally stayed in dilapidated barracks, away from the rest of the paratroopers. Again, remember segregation, 1945 time frame. However, the legendary General Jumpin' Jim Gavin was forward thinking. He's like the father of the 82nd Airborne Division. He had commanded an all-black platoon on the American frontier in the 1920s, which means he worked with, commanded, and led part of the Buffalo Soldiers out west. And he disagreed with the Army's policy on segregation. So against all Army official policies, he integrated the men of the Triple Nickel into the division, moving them from those dilapidated buildings and integrating them fully into his division. The rest of the Department of Defense followed, and in 1947, the armed forces were officially integrated. Now, by comparison, in 1947, there was only one African American in Major League Baseball, and the Civil Rights Act was nearly 20 years away. It was soldiers from our Army who protected the Little Rock Nine on their first day of school. Though our Army still has its challenges in terms of race, a conversation for another time, I think we get it right more than any other institution in America. African American soldiers have served at every level of command, from platoon leader to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They fought and died in every major American war, including our recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Today, American soldiers, black, white, male, female, serve on every continent, even Antarctica. They do everything from combat operations to disaster relief. Above all, they represent our values. When thousands were stricken not too long ago, last year or so, with Ebola in West Africa, our armed forces were there, providing critical medical care to countless victims of this deadly disease. My most recent combat deployment was Afghanistan. And in my time there, American troops helped create an environment in which young girls could go to school for the first time. Elsewhere in Iraq and Syria, in present day, American troops are helping locals stand up for what they believe in. We do these things to build a better peace, one in which men and women are free to live their lives with dignity and respect. That was the world that Dr. King tried to build. In his famous speech, Dr. King asked us not to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred, but that we should do so from the high plane of dignity and discipline. And that's what selfless service is about. It's what we can do for others as soldiers, as teachers, as citizens of this great nation. So I'd like to lastly thank all of you for coming out to this great event, and for those who put it on. I know events like this are a lot of work, so thank you very much for that. And thanks to all of you for your service, not only to the institution of a school, but your community, your county, and to this nation that we all have the rights to enjoy. So thanks again. Have a great program.
We're so grateful for our men and women who serve this nation as warriors. We also want to remember that so many of the battles for righteousness and for freedom, as the Colonel just reminded us, in this nation have happened beyond the battlefield. The Wilmington 10, the Little Rock 9, the Freedom Riders, our public school teachers, our educators, those who have been molding the minds of the next generation of freedom fighters and those who would stand for what is right. And so we are grateful for this day when we remember Dr. King. And we also remember those who are still in the fight today. I would like to especially recognize one of my mentors, Dr. Julia Scatcliffe O'Grady. One of the fine educators here in this fine institution. She has prepared two of her students to stand before you and share recitations from Dr. King's work, carrying that legacy on to the next generation. Thank you for doing that. Please welcome to the stage Nolan Gilmore and Allie McGinley.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank Professor Julia Scatcliffe O'Grady for giving us the opportunity to do our part in honoring Dr. King. We're going to recite a quick excerpt from Dr. King's last speech, I've Seen the Mountaintop. And I would like to have Allie start.
Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School. And she said, while it should not matter, I would like to mention that I am a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering, and I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. And I am simply writing to say that I'm happy that you did not sneeze. And I want to say tonight that I'm happy I did not sneeze. Because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960 when students all over the South started sitting at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream and taking the whole nation back to the halls of democracy, which were dug deep by the founding fathers of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961 when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel.
If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962 when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten up their backs. Whenever a man and woman straighten up their back, they're going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it is bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in 1963 when the black people of Birmingham, Alabama aroused the conscience of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to try and tell America about a dream I had had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been down in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze.
And they were telling me, now it doesn't matter, now. It really doesn't matter what happens now. I left Atlanta this morning, and as we got started on the plane, there were 6 of us. The pilot said over the public address system, we are sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane. And to be sure that all of the bags were checked, and to be sure that nothing would be wrong with on the plane, we had to check out everything carefully. And we've had the plane protected and guarded all night. Then I got into Memphis, and some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out. What would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers? Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind.
Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned with that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as people, will get to the promised land. And I am so happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Thank you.
Let's said earlier, St. Andrews University is a fine institution with fine students. Thank you, Ali. And don't tell me, I know it. I just said it, and I was just like, oh, I'm going to say it, and then I got nervous, and I looked at you. Nolan. Thank you. I'll be here all night. Thank you all for being prime examples of that. We also have another student who is an example of deed when it comes to excellence and service to others. Please welcome Mr. Daniel Humphrey, who's going to share about Special Community Project.
Good evening. I give honor to God, the Martin Luther King Committee, and my SAU family. Last year, Dr. Alicia McLeod gave me the opportunity of joining the Martin Luther King Committee to be a student involved in the program to help spread word around campus. During the meeting last semester, Dr. Alicia McLeod informed me Professor Cameron would like for me to speak in this year's program about my service to others. When they told me this, I was astonished. And I was smiling from ear to ear. My time in St. Paul's, North Carolina, my family and I started the Build and Better Community Project because we felt it was something that needed to be done in our community. Our vision reflects Dr. King's ideals and dreams. I've seen many people, young and old, in my community become discouraged and give up on life. And this has been an ongoing trend for many years. In my graduating class in 2012, there are 65 African American males. There are currently 2 African American males who attend a 4-year university, with one of those being me. Through my service to others, I hope to change negative trends such as this one and continue to see others succeed in life. Since August 13, 2015, we've had community cookouts, a movie night, a haunted house, which got over 100 kids off the street, a financial seminar, a roadside cleanup, and we helped 9 families over the holiday season. Dr. King has made a huge impact on all our lives. He has been one of my inspirations in servicing others. My challenge to you is to try to service others more so than only servicing yourselves. I know this is not an easy task, but if I can overcome many obstacles, such as being a full-time student, a college basketball player, and being a 21-year-old African-American male running a charity, I know it's a common task to service others more so than only servicing yourselves. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the program.
Young man, Dr. King taught us to dream, and you young people are teaching us that the dream can be a reality. Thank you. The power of words and the power of action together. I'm going to share a little poetry with you all right now, a little bit of drama to kind of tie all this together. It's something I've been gifted to do. Can't sing, can't dance too well, but I can deal with an audience. So you don't mind if I love on you for a little bit? Would you repeat after me? If you believe, say I believe. I believe. If you believe, say I believe. I believe. If you believe, say I believe. I believe. Thank you. I believe in the power of words. I believe in you, and I believe in me. I believe that the words that we say have the power to set people free. I believe that the things that we say can change them, those, and they to us, these, and we. For you see, when we use our words responsibly, they have the power to teach, build, and even heal. For the words that you say can put wings on everything that you can think, dream, or feel. I'm going to share a poem with you by a young lady named Olivia Green. She's an artist out of Fayetteville, and she shared this in honor of Dr. King. We came north, looking for freedom. We came pursued, looking for freedom. We came by bus, by train, by foot, looking for freedom. We came with wounds that had not yet healed, looking for freedom. We came to the dirty, crowded cities looking for freedom. We came to cook and to clean, to teach and to learn, looking for freedom. Then we came to Washington to hear a dream. I have a dream that one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope, and this is the faith that I go back to the South with. We returned to Dixie to demand our freedom. We returned by bus, by train, by dark of night to demand our freedom. We returned to sit down, sit in, boycott, and riot to demand our freedom. We returned to be beat, hosed down, locked in jail to demand our freedom. We returned willing to die to demand our freedom. We returned with hope, with song in jubilation to demand our freedom. We returned and earned our freedom. Thank you to Olivia Green for that poem. I love that poem because it forces us to look back at the good, the bad, and the ugly of how we ended up where we are today. But it also forces us to look ourselves in the mirror. Every woman, every man, every community has to look themselves in the mirror and ask the question, am I willing to earn the freedom that I enjoy? We have not yet arrived. The dream has not come to full fruition. But if willing people like you and me will come together and say, I'm willing to earn it. I'm willing to fight for it. I believe and I know things will change. This is a little story I wrote about the need for change, and I hope you will find a call for action in it. As I pulled into the driveway of a typical suburban North Carolina elementary school, about to drop off my 7-year-old for a typical day in first grade, I sat in the driver's seat and suddenly I was struck, jostled and jarred, not by another vehicle or any other object for that matter. As I sat there listening to the news, I was distracted, distraught, and dismayed to hear about riots and violence in the streets of Baltimore, Maryland. Instantly, I recalled the source of all of this mayhem. It was a black man. A black man just 25 years old. A black man who was arrested for reasons that are rather inconsequential now. A black man who died, or was killed rather, while in police custody. A black man who was some mother's child, some father's son, some grandparents' hope and pride and joy. A black man named Freddie Gray. Freddie Gray was a black man who was one day just a little black boy. Startled, I peered into my rearview mirror and I saw one such little black boy staring back at me. He has beautifully brown chocolate skin. He gets that from his mother. Deep, dark brown eyes that hide behind the round folds in his cheeks when he smiles. He gets those from me. His hair is dark and curly. designed by God to grow from his scalp and to protect his precious brain from the intense African sun. His name is Sterling. Sterling is named after one of my best friends from college and one of my favorite actors, Sterling Kelby Brown, a Stanford University and NYU graduate. He's also named after the famous African-American scholar, writer, and poet, Sterling Allen Brown. Sterling Barron Kelly is his full name. The name Sterling literally means little star. Figuratively, it means pure and thoroughly excellent, as he always will be in my eyes. Full of life and love and laughter. I remember sitting close to my wife at his very first parent-teacher conference in school. He's in a Chinese immersion program. He's nearly bilingual. And I remember wanting to impress his teacher, and I said, my son has taught me how to count to 10 in Chinese. Yi, er, sun, si, liu, qi, ba, jiu, shu. His teacher, Yao Lao Shua, she was impressed but not surprised. In her broken English, she sang the praises of my son's academic acumen. But it was when she explained his most prominent attribute that I cried tears of pure joy. Sterling is, how do you say it? Sterling has integrity. Very honest, good boy. Sterling Barron Kelly. His middle name, Barron, is for his grandfather's. My father's name is Barry, and my wife's father's name is Ron. Two retired educators and coaches, leaders in their churches and in their communities. Sterling Barron Kelly is the Barron legacy of great men and women, fighters, workers, survivors, day laborers, tent farmers, fishermen, police officers, EMTs, firefighters, airmen, soldiers, Marines, sailors, pillars of communities. But today, when reality smacked me in my face, I looked in the back seat of my vehicle and I saw a little black boy. I did not even have to ponder or prepare. I spoke clearly and eloquently, succinctly, his instructions for the day. Son, I need you to be the best today. Not just your best, I need you to be better than everyone around you. I want you to be smarter, I want you to work harder, I want you to be more attentive, more obedient, kinder, and gentler than anyone else in your classroom. Because you see, son, when I look at you, I see Sterling Barron Kelly, my precious son. But sons, some people will look at you and they will only see a boy with black skin. I know it's brown, but in this country we call it black. And you see, some people will only ever see you as a black boy. And to some people, a black boy is dangerous. To some people, a black boy is violent. To some people, a black boy is stupid. I know it's a bad word, son, please let me finish. Son, to some people, you will only ever be a black boy. But to me, and your mother and God in heaven, you will always be our Sterling, our little star. Pure and thoroughly excellent. So son, when you go into that school today and every day for the rest of your life for that matter, I want you to honor your Creator, and you honor your family, and you honor yourself with dignity. Son, do you know what dignity means? I'm out of time. Son, do you understand what I'm saying to you? Yes, sir, I think so. Daddy? Yes, son. Can I go now? Yes, son, you can go. Son! Daddy loves you. I stand before you as a man who's proud of this country, and I'm proud of the people in this country. But I know there needs to be change. And I'm willing to fight and to work and to struggle to earn the change for all of us. I stand before you committed to fight, to struggle, and to earn not only for my children, but your children. A land in which they will never be judged by their color of their skin, but by the content of their character. If you believe, say, I believe. I believe. 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 Then earn it. God bless you. As Daniel said, I give God the glory. I thank him for the gift. I thank him for even the painful stories, because they can be a benefit to others and remind us of what needs to be done. Thank God. Thank God. Well, to lift our spirits, I want to welcome once again the Fort Bragg Clarinet Quartet. Gentlemen, please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Sergeant Patrick Hanadell. This is the Army Ground Forces Band Clarinet Quartet from Fort Bragg. I'll introduce them. We have Specialist Julian Jenkins. We have Specialist Gabe Stillman. And on bass clarinet, Staff Sergeant Joel Bernal. As Colonel Gibson said earlier, there are many ways to serve. I'd also like to add that sometimes we're called to serve when we least expect it. And one such example occurred to me in 1942. In the spring of 1942, there was a young American composer by the name of Samuel Barber. He was already internationally famous. His Adagio for Strings, which you've all heard at some point in your life, gorgeous piece of music, had been in New York City by the famed conductor Arturo Toscanini in 1936. It was already well known throughout the world. He was also of draft age, and that spring he was planning to go on a chamber opera tour with Boston Symphony Orchestra conductor Serge Koussevitzky. But he had to send Mr. Koussevitzky a letter stating that he would not be able to go on that tour because he had been drafted by the Army. He didn't try to get out of it. It wasn't what he really wanted to do, but he did it anyway. And after basic training, they gave him an office job in New York City, writing memos and such, a lot of paperwork. His eyesight prevented him from going overseas and into combat. And again, he wasn't a big fan of paperwork. He really wanted to write music. But he did it as Private Barber did as he was told. And when he was done with his work, he would go to his commanding officer and he would ask him, "Sir, I finished my work for the day. Do you mind if I go to a private room so I can write some music?" And his commanding officer would tell him, "I don't know, Private Barber. That would set a dangerous military precedent." Fortunately, not everybody agreed with that commanding officer. Soon, word got around to the very highest-ranking generals in the Army that Private Barber was this internationally famous composer. So, these generals asked him to write a march. And when Private Barber thought about what kind of march he wanted to write, he was inspired by a certain group of soldiers who were beginning to fight a new type of the enemy. And the legacy of these soldiers lives on today in the special forces that are trained just here up the road at Fort Bragg. He wrote this piece for full concert band, and it was premiered in Atlantic City, New Jersey, by the, let's see if I can get this right, the Army Air Corps Technical Training and Command Band. It became a huge hit throughout the war. It is the World War II Generations March. I've transcribed it for Clarinet Quartet, and I hope it goes well. This is Private Samuel Barber's Commando March.
was in place. I was like, oh, y'all play another one? I love it. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Standing on the wall and in the pit, the orchestra pit, that is. No, the beautiful, beautiful music. We're grateful for those who use their gifts in so many different ways. We're going to ask you all to use your gifts. There are some shower singers here, and there are some folks who can actually sing outright. We're going to ask everyone to stand. If you are a shower singer, please sing lower. You can sing outright. Please join us as we are led tonight by Dr. Tracy Feldman in the singing of We Shall Overcome Together.
Y'all hear me okay? I hope y'all will sing. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome one day. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall live in peace someday. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we are not afraid today. One more time. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Thank you very much.
We've got soldiers playing the clarinet beautifully. We've got a biologist playing the guitar and singing beautifully. I love it. Only at St. Andrews. Only at St. Andrews. Another special treat that you can only find at St. Andrews is Dr. Renee Leach McLeod. I'm going to call her up to give our closing remarks.
Life's most persistent and urgent question. What are you doing for others? Dr. King asked this question of an audience in Montgomery, Alabama in 1957. Many MLK celebrations embrace this particular question. Service to others is simply an act of a helpful activity. It can be simple, yet very complex. But yet the act of helping can mean so much to the receiver. We can help in so many ways, so many diverse ways. And that's the beauty of our world, the diversity in our world. Some may serve as truck drivers, some may serve as teachers, some may serve as ushers in a church or in an auditorium. Whatever that service, it's to help somebody in a very unselfish way. We would like to thank all of you for coming. And special thanks to the MLK committee. I would like for all of you all to please stand. Don't be bashful. Please stand. These fine young people have worked hand in hand with me to get this program off the ground, and I'm very pleased. Again, we welcome all of you, and I would certainly like at this, Mr. Ben, would you please? Some of you may not know Mr. Ben McNeil, but I wanted to say something special about Mr. Ben. Mr. Ben has been very instrumental in working in the community, getting the word out about the program, visiting churches and so forth. Been a true inspiration. And sir, thank you so much for your service. He is a retired police officer and retired military. Mr. Ben, thank you so much. Service in some shape, form, or fashion is needed 24/7, 365 days a year, or 366 days. Please just do not serve on Sundays. Please do not just serve on Thanksgiving and Christmas. People are hungry throughout the year. Someone may need a meal today. Reach out and touch. No matter how small or how large, you're doing God's will. And service to others makes the world go round. No matter what one may think, we need each other. If we don't reach out and help each other, we're going to destroy each other. It's so much easier to reach out and help. Again, thank you for coming. And again, to the committee, I thank you. This is it for 2016. Hope to see you in 2017.